This was a good week of chapters with no One Piece, as I sort of expected. Everything else seemingly stood out a little bit more than usual, with Black Clover and the Hunters Guild being particular standouts. So now we're going to start off with Black Clover 307, and this was a pretty great chapter showing and explaining what Yuno's new magic is and some more about some of his past. For example, the fact that the Spade Kingdom's royal family has unique magic that has been passed down through the generations, from his father having sun magic and his mother having moon magic. Yuno's magic from the Spade Kingdom is star magic, meaning that the reason he was so powerful from the get-go was because he was a royal, thus somewhat diluting the message up until this point. However, the other major peasant characters, such as Magna and Zora, have already proved how powerful and genuinely powerful peasants can actually be. So Yuno now just being immensely strong because he's a royal, it doesn't dilute that message too much. It doesn't help it, but it doesn't completely negate it either. Belle is excited, Xenon is not thrilled, and so the battle continues with Xenon and Yuno going one-on-one. Yuno ended up saving Langris and Fenril and having them go find a healing mage, as Yuno is going to take on Xenon. We see their battle as Yuno has already mastered to a degree his original magic and is using some very potent spells, which was surprising, and this pisses off Xenon immensely, which in truth they are quite contrasting, seeing as how both had a fairly similar dream, but one went down a more villainous path than the other. And so they are going to battle to prove who is right in the end. And so the final page is that they clash, and this battle is far from over, as each side is going to use as much magic and power as they possibly can to win this battle of ideals. The willing to save everyone no matter the cost versus killing those who get in your way for the sake of the mission. So that was the chapter. I thought it was actually very good seeing Yuno's past a little bit, as well as getting an explanation on what his magic is, as well as seeing the continued fight between him and Xenon. So overall, I'd give this chapter an A. I thought it was very good and very entertaining with its fight. I still don't think Yuno, even with this new power-up, has enough to beat Xenon, but I think he'll hold him off now until the others arrive pretty handily, and then have some way of defeating him in a manner of speaking, or at least being a part of the finishing blow in the end, just so that he again has his victory. So now we're on to Undead Unluck Chapter 83, and this was a good chapter, showing that Fuko has a lot more resolve to do things her own way than simply fighting it out, as we see that she wants to talk things out with Spring, having decided to do a lot of research on him, seeing as how he doesn't directly destroy humans, and at night when there are no cherry blossoms, he seems extremely lonely. Spring takes this as somewhat of a joke and explains that humans were mean to him first because they believed cherry blossoms were an ill omen, and so they took out their superstitions upon him. He has had a dislike for them ever since. However, it does seem as though he had, to a degree, a kind heart. Fuko more or less decides to see it a little bit, as well as understanding him about why he hates humans, but then explains that she loves cherry blossoms in spring, and that with her isolating herself, she always looked out to see the cherry blossoms and everyone being happy about it, and finding it that they're a symbol of now adventure and change, and tries to give him a reason to believe again, I guess, before having to defeat him. As she even mentions, if it wasn't for the fact that they had to do this, they probably wouldn't have met. So at least she seemingly connected with him to a degree. It seemingly did work, as Spring tells her to run away before transforming into his more monstrous self. which is basically still him, but a bit more kabuki warrior than before. So now the battle is on, a 3-round gambling game, in a manner of speaking, with 100,000 souls on the line. Some of the union members discuss if they have enough just within the under to pay the tab, and they do, as they're watching as Fuko is making this conversation and making this deal. She then asks everyone at the union to please lend her a hand as they all get turned into coins for her to use in this new gambling game. And that's how the chapter ends, with the gambling game being on and Fuko versus Spring being now the next big major thing to happen. So overall, I'd give this chapter a B. I thought it was good, seeing Fuko take some command of the situation and wanting to know more about Spring. Seeing some of Spring's backstory gives him a bit more character than the others, as Autumn didn't have too much to her, as well as Winter was just a crystal that was killed off screen pretty much. And Summer didn't have much of anything either, so Spring and Autumn are pretty much the only ones that are characterized in any way, shape, or form, with Spring being very much characterized. So with this battle, I wonder if he goes back to trying to be friends with Fuko to some degree, and how that could play out later in the story, if there is a very much later in the story. But for now, this game should be very interesting, as well as the other battles below the tower, where we have everyone still fighting to keep everyone away from Spring and Fuko. We'll see if those are still going on, or if they notice that Andy and Billy are going up to watch the fight, and they all do, or something like that. I don't know. I also did like that they showed that some time had passed as Fuko was gaining research with Tella and Bunny. Well, Bunny was just hanging out with Fuko, but she was gaining intelligence from Tella, which I thought was at least a nice way to show that she did train a bit with everyone in Under before this whole battle began. So now we're on to Mashle, Magic and Muscles, chapter 82, and this was a good chapter showing a lot of Demina's backstory, as well as some bits with Mash involved in it, showing that Mash and Demina were eternal rivals, showing that both of them had immense power and strength, one in the version of destructive magical potential, and Mash being apparently a very gifted carpenter at the tender age of 5 months old. We also get to see a big battle between Demina and 2 of the Divine Visionaries, which I was very much surprised by, as the 2 Divine Visionaries are not struggling, but it's not as easy as they thought, as they're going fairly evenly toe-to-toe with Demina, and even Demina says that if it was just one of them, he would have won. Then the backstory where whenever Demina's power lashed out, he would destroy the entire building they were in. However, Mash, being such a gifted carpenter and physical abilities beyond his years already at 5 months old, showed the 2 of them had immense power, as Mash would always rebuild whatever part of the room Demina destroyed, as well as even being able to build a cabinet. And Demina had a deep respect for Innocent Zero and wanted all of his attention, but he couldn't do that with Mash there. So with Mash, he decided he had to get rid of him, and even as a baby, he decided to attack him with his magical power. However, this didn't work, as Mash was able to pull off drifting as a toddler to avoid the attacks. However, before they were able to kind of finish their rivalry or continue their rivalry in any way, Mash had disappeared, and Demina realized as long as Mash lived, he would never have the full attention of his father, of their father. And so he decided to warp an entire persona about killing Mash and getting rid of him so that he can have his father's full attention. The final panels are of them arriving at their final destination for the final day of the exams, with both sides gearing up, though of course Mash and crew are a bit more ridiculous than you would imagine, as for some odd reason they think it's some sort of horse ride piggyback competition and not just a straight up fight. I don't know what Mash, Dot, and whatever the third guy's name is. I don't know what they're doing. They're being ridiculous though. But that was the chapter. I thought it was very good, between the backstory as well as showing us some of Demina's power and seeing that he can take on Divine Visionaries, which Mash up until this point has only been able to defend against the Divine Visionary. But he did take out Cell War, who I would imagine is about on par with one, if not a bit lower, so it's up in the air to see how strong Mash is compared to Demina. So overall, I'd give this chapter a B. It was good, showing those backstories and the ludicrous nature of them, with Mash at 5 months being a gifted carpenter, and Demina at 5 months being extremely powerful, that he knocked people unconscious just by his presence alone. And the next fight should be interesting, as it seems as though all of Mash's friends are there and are going to help him. Well, the 3 add-ons, because Dot and Lance still actually have a genuine chance of winning and becoming Divine Visionaries themselves, which I imagine Lance is probably going to do. Dot, not so much, but you never know. That could be a shocking twist that all 3 of them make it, and Dot is the weakest Divine Visionary of all time, which would be really funny. So now we're on to Sakamoto Days, chapter 43, and this was a pretty good chapter, with the fight between Osuragi and Dump, the serial killer from last week, who I kept saying was an assassin and every other thing, because I can't remember anything. But Dump and Osuragi start their battle, and they're pretty even for at least a hot minute, as it seems as though Osuragi's not taking it very seriously, as she's trying to figure out how to handle Dump, even going so far as cutting off a Buddha statue's head and kicking it into her before changing venues. Again, Osuragi's not taking it very seriously as Dump's going full on, but the tide turns as Osuragi decides that she's had enough and starts beating Dump down pretty heavily. We get a bit of Dump's backstory, seeing as how she has this warped sense of love and only wants someone to look at her and her alone. So she kills them, thinking that's the most way she can get attention. She gets knocked into an area where she first dislodged Osuragi's weapon, which Osuragi is able to get back up, but Dump seems desperate, knowing that things aren't going her way, and goes for an all-out attack, before Osuragi tells her that the reason she's allowed to live is because of bad people like her, and that she loves her. And Dump, stunned by this confession, and ends up getting sliced by Osuragi for it. I can't tell if she's dead, though I wouldn't be surprised if she was, but we'll see next week how this fully ends. But yeah, this was a good chapter, seeing this whole fight through. I like that Sakamoto Days seemingly has a way of just starting and ending fights within one chapter, so you just see the full thing. Again, I did like that a lot of the offense was by Dump, and Osuragi had no real issue with any of it, and was kind of able to take advantage whenever she desired to, and even one-upped her fully in the end. I imagine Dump's dead. They kill people in this very regularly, especially the villains, so I wouldn't be surprised, but I also wouldn't be surprised if she somehow survived and had an obsession with Osuragi in somewhat of a comedic character way, but that remains to be seen. But yeah, overall, I'd give this chapter a B. It was good. It had a good fight between everything, and Osuragi continues to be a very fun character, as laid back and relaxed as she is. Now I wonder who's going to be next, as it seems as though the last 2 are going to probably be the biggest problems for everyone, especially the very last guy who likes to crumple things into a small ball. He seems the most angry out of everyone. So now we're on to the Hunters Guild, Red Hood, chapter 15, and the chapter, while reading it, is a bit weird, as it seems as though a lot of people keep forgetting what's going on, or forgetting who is who, and other major characters are all... things are being weird, and that is explained as the chapter goes on. For example, the major witch villain doesn't know who the werewolf is, who she's been traveling with, and Grimm doesn't seem to know what's going on with a scenario that she had planned out, as well as other things, as she just seems overall confused, which Debonair picks up on. We find out that there were 2 Hunters Guild members already within the Hunter Guild exam to make sure and observe the entirety of the exam. We get to see some of the other character interactions, and we get to see some more of how things went between certain characters. Like the main guard guy was actually the one who betrayed Telti in Telti's first disembarkation exam, and now they're going to trust each other because now they're both in the guild, so that relationship should be very interesting, as well as seeing how things are, as Velo wants to know what the plan is to get rid of all the werewolves. So it'll be interesting to see how that goes as they finally enter the secret location of where the hunter headquarters is. We then see that Lucian, the werewolf that was following the witch, gave her a protected letter explaining exactly who the mayor is and what he actually wants. We don't see it fully, however, it's sort of implied what it is, or at least actually, I'm not sure full on what his true goal is, at least according to Lycian, but it's enough that it affects the witch into making her very upset. Debonair calls into headquarters to tell them something's going on with Grimm and that the Ironworks is completely quarantined in order to protect the book, leading it to that the story is run by storytellers within the world, which I think is very interesting. We then get the gist of what the Hunters Guild believes is going on with the werewolves, and that it's lycanthropy, and that it is a type of disease, and that they want to make a cure to ensure that no one can become a werewolf ever again by being plagued with lycanthropy. It'll be very interesting to see how they decide to do this, as well as seeing if they have to find the source of lycanthropy, whatever it is. The two veteran Hunter Guild members get the call that they're under quarantine orders, and that they're to remain there, but no one knows why. We then have the head director, or the Hunter Guild Collections Deputy Director, or Department Director, go up to an individual who's writing into a book, and it's seeming as though that is the major storybook to tell what is supposed to happen. And they even explain that things might not always go according to what is written, but that's not surprising. However, things have been edited, and that 2 pages were ripped out of the book at some point, and that's why things are changing unexpectedly in a way that shouldn't be happening. And that apparently 13 years ago it was ripped out, and that's why they're taking effect now. Velo sees the mayor again. Everyone's a bit put on edge, but Velo tells them that it's okay because it's the mayor. He is family to Velo. Velo then asks why everything's going on, when we hear that the mayor's plan was to drag Grimm out of the role of main character and crown Velo the main character instead. Velo's confused until the mayor drags Velo with him, using whatever teleportation powder he's been using, into the chamber with the guy writing in the book, and he explains that long ago dragons flew into the sky, but the hunters eliminated every last one, and that's the story he wrote 500 years ago. So the mayor is something extremely important, which is extremely interesting, as I wouldn't have thought that he was, at least this important. And seeing that he's been able to manipulate seemingly the fabric of the world is extremely entertaining and interesting, as he seemingly might be the major villain of the story, as the werewolves might be secondary villains, something that you have to battle to get to him, which is actually excellently done, and I'm curious to see how it goes in the long run, because I imagine things won't go his way here in a manner of speaking, or it might, and now Velo has to work against the mayor to achieve what he wants, as well as to save everyone and everything from the mayor in the end, instead of just the werewolves. Now, to some that might be a bit boring, but you never know what the mayor is. He seemingly is almost as powerful as a god at this point, having been able to write down an entire story that took place in this world with the deaths of dragons. So I can only imagine how powerful he is. So I imagine he has some part to play with the werewolves, maybe their origin, maybe he's their end, and it's up to everyone else to maybe save them. I don't know. All I know is that I thought this reveal was actually very well done. I really enjoyed the twist that the mayor is not as good as we were led to believe. So overall, I'd give this chapter, I think, an A, because I thought it was very excellent, as well as this twist at the end showing the major villain of potentially the whole story finally revealing himself, only 15 chapters in, mind you, but enough time to leave you wanting to know why he's done what he's done and what his gripe against Grimm is, as well as knowing why Grimm was the main character here. Things will be changing, and it'll be very interesting to see how it unfolds with everything that the mayor plans on doing, especially what Velo's role in the whole thing is. As we can tell, he probably will, and at this point has been the main character. It would be rather interesting, however, if somehow it stopped and Grimm was the main character, having Velo just be her apprentice. We'll have to see, especially as next week we'll probably get the conclusion of whatever the mayor plans on doing. So that was all of the major quote-unquote chapters. The rest were all good. Jujutsu Kaisen continues its rather well done work with the culling game. My Hero was good for once, with Star and Stripe versus Shigaraki battle, which was fine, which was good. Seeing how powerful both of them have become, or at least how Star and Stripe is actually very powerful, and how strong Shigaraki is, as well as All for One starting to assimilate with Shigaraki, as Shigaraki desperately tries to not be assimilated. Blue Box was good, continuing their drama as well as continuing the sports dilemma that the main character's facing. Yazakura family was very good, showing that the father is an absolute monster that can't be stopped, and that now the main character should be entering that realm as well through a manner of fusing with the major villain of the plot so far, who seemingly is now dead. Elusive Samurai was good as we finished the interrogation of the main character. So that was all of the chapters. I thought they were all very good, with all of them having major plot developments between the hero and the villain, intense stare downs and all. So the battles should be immense in the next coming chapters, with everyone finding their footing and the battles entering their apex. So with that being said, if you liked the video, please leave a like, and as always, thank you for watching.